Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the gathering. I am David Ault. Have you ever come across an illustration that was just so good? One that sort of sticks in your mind year after year after year. For me, one of those illustrations was about what is a paradigm shift. I'm sure you're very familiar with that concept. But in my teaching history, when that subject would come up, this was the illustration that really seemed to open people's minds and have them go, oh. And it's you're standing in a grocery store checkout line. And it's the typical atmosphere of everybody's a little bit agitated or tired and just wants to get their things and get out. But in front of the line is a young father, and he has multiple children, and they're all misbehaving. One's crying, one is tugging at his shirt, saying, Dad, Dad, can you get me this and this? And he's having a really difficult time just completing checking out with the cashier. And so if you were to scan the thoughts of all of the people behind him, what would they be? They could range everything from, oh, this person doesn't know how to parent. And my God, he shouldn't be allowed to do the grocery shopping. Just all kinds of judgments, right? About how we would never allow our children to behave that way in public and on and on and on and on. But then let's say there's this pocket of quiet and you hear the father say to the cashier, I'm so, so sorry that I'm struggling here. You see, their mom recently passed away, and it's taking quite a bit of time and energy to do all of the things that she did so well. And of course, it's a really hard time at home. And all of a sudden, all the minds hear that, and there is, hopefully, what we would call a paradigm shift. All of a sudden, it's like the windows are open and those thoughts of judgment just change, evaporate into a sense of empathy and understanding, almost to the point of wanting to help and to care and to assist this person in this very vulnerable state. And so a paradigm shift. And if you look at the etymology of the word paradigm, it's got a Greek origin and it means beside or alongside. And it's kind of like how we walk alongside or beside with a belief system or a set of concepts. And they're pretty much tried and true. But if there is a shift in that, if all of the sudden something that we have just really locked into is infused with new information or new insight, then that which we've held so tightly to suddenly begins to unravel and dissolve. And that phrase actually came from an American physicist and philosopher by the name of Thomas Kuhn. And in the 20th century, he wrote a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And if you Google the term paradigm shift, it will say that it's the most used and abused term in contemporary discussions. Everything from like the business world of organizational change to the spiritual world to intellectual progress, they all use this phrase paradigm shift. And so it's inevitable that it continues to rise up and invite us to examine where are we currently in paradigm shifts. And one of the things that is fun to consider is that there is no end point in that for you and I. That the things that we sometimes lock into or hold on to as definitives are not. And we seem to create a system of safety whereby if we can just find our place to stand on where we believe, then we will be okay. And then we will eliminate some of the chaos and we will have a sense of control. But a genuine paradigm shift reminds us there is really no place to stand. When you look at that which is evolution, we are continuously being buoyed and spiraled above and beyond anything that we have created as definitive. It actually beckons us to entertain the idea that the ultimate evolution is allowing ourselves to not be concerned with where we stand, to be vulnerable and open to insights, to be able to look beyond appearances, to be able to shed any allegiance to all of the sensory components that are confined by humanity and begin to see or to understand and know everything that beyond the beyond the beyond the beyond is the way in which evolution beckons us to participate in. So paradigm shifts, it's a really big thing. Even though it's used and abused, it's probably used and abused so much because it really contains so much beauty and so much insight for you and I personally. And so this summer, I am having such a great time in leading a book study on a book called Unbinding by Kathleen Dowling Singh, Unbinding. It has its origins in Buddhist traditions. And one of the things that I was thinking about as I was looking at this week's assignment, it was paradigm shifts, because she talks about things like dependent arising. What is a dependent arising? A Buddhist phrase. And really that's an explanation for systems of suffering. So you and I participate in systems of suffering. And I thought, when we're breaking them down, and one of our approaches over the summer is we're going to look at all the different systems of suffering, but it's to do that from a place of having a willingness for a paradigm shift. One of the biggest foundational systems of suffering is ignorance. Ignorance. And she says this beautiful quote by the saint Teresa of Avila. She was saying that the mystic Teresa of Avila, which, by the way, her life is really worth exploring and reading about. But she said the presence of ignorance is praying as if God were not present. The presence of ignorance, this system of suffering, is praying as if God were not present. So it's that old-fashioned beseeching prayer, begging prayer, bargaining prayer that sometimes we will default ourselves into. And in some traditions, the way in which they still pray as a mainstay. But to pray or to seek as if the answer is separate from us, to dwell in this sense of um, separation and duality and anxiety and worry, as if all of that has within it an opportunity for you and I to have a paradigm shift. And so when she says the presence of ignorance is praying as if God were not present, really made me appreciate and evaluate how can you and I begin to collaborate with a little bit about paradigm shifts and the really personal things, the things that are weighing you down right now in this moment. And so I wrote down things like wounds and regrets and shame and guilt. And if I were to ask you right now to stop and contemplate just for a moment, what is the thing that feels most burdensome to you right now in this moment? And then as you think about that without censoring, say, do you realize that there is an opportunity for a paradigm shift about that very thing? That this dependent arising of ignorance, which is this foundational thing, is also infiltrating into the way in which you are holding that. And so one of the paradigm shifts then around such a thing was that those wounds and those stories, those regrets and those shames, what I wrote down this morning was that they've never been holding us. We've been holding them. It's a paradigm shift, if you will. They've never imprisoned us. we have locked them into our own personal identity. And so if we genuinely wanted to be free of them, we've had the key all along. Genuinely, if we didn't find some satisfaction in identifying with those wounds and stories and letting them lead the way in which we participate in the world, then we would have come to the realization long ago. We would have been ready long ago to realize, I don't need to hold on to this. I'm the one holding this. It's not holding me. And so it's a very sort of amazing and sort of cold water splash in the face kind of paradigm shift to think about, what am I getting out of holding on to such a thing? What am I getting out of? What am I benefiting from by carrying such a burden? And if we were to dissect it and spend time with that, there are all kinds of things where it is a form of community. I'm going to find other people who are carrying the same burdens, and we're going to go, oh, you poor thing. And they're going to say, oh, you poor thing. And I'm going to at least have some form of a tribe that I feel aligned with. But is that the tribe that you want to stay in? Is that the tribe that's going to free you and be your house of true essence? Are those going to be your people? Or are you going to understand that that's a place that you have decided to stake your claim and stay in, so that you can identify and feel this faux sense of safety? Or are you going to let that paradigm shift go? What would it be like to be free of this? And those are just, little small, little taste of the magnitude of paradigm shifts that await you and I. And so I want to invite you this week to think about that. Think about what Teresa of Avila said, that ignorance is praying as if God were not present. Another way that I used to entertain that idea is to say that suffering is a mistrust in the divine, as if all of the things that are around me are absent of that which is divinity itself. And divinity itself is saying, hey, don't be fooled by all of this surface condition. Come with me, dive deeper into what is beyond. And so I would love for you to sit this week and to maybe look at your dependent arising, your ignorance, your attachments, all of the things that might be weighing heavy upon you, and know that right here in this moment is that presence of solution, that paradigm shift that wants you to begin to feel that freedom that has long awaited to come and co-create with you and I. All it needs is space and invitation, allowing and welcoming. So let's do that together. May you have a blessed week, and may you have an abundant array of paradigm shifts. Blessings.